Hi, welcome to the Tales of TIC podcast. We are very privileged today to be joined by Cabot Earle. So Cabot has had a very successful career within the environmental testing sector, occupying several senior operations positions with Microbac, including the Chief Executive Officer position. Cabot is now the founder and CEO of Metiri Group, who are doing amazing things in the industry. So Cabot, great to have you on.
It's great to be here with you. Thanks, Anton.
No, I'm sure it'll be a great episode. So happy to hear your thoughts. And I suppose, leading on to that, what a better place to start than, going through your background. So could you please share for everyone listening how you began your career within the environmental testing sector?
Yeah, it's a pretty quick story, but not a background in science, but I found myself introduced to a great organization, and in that company, I was given opportunity to advance and take on new responsibilities and challenges at a very early age, and a very early spot in my career. I then supplemented that with advanced degrees in law and business, and that really enabled me to move up and advance on the commercial side of the business. So I think always had an appreciation for the science, but certainly not a scientific expert by any means. But it was very complementary in terms of skill sets within the company. I ran that company for several years, and then in 2019 we started Metiri, and we've been building the company here over the last few years, adding new labs, opening up new service capabilities, building out and strengthening our team, and it's been several years of pretty rapid growth and change.
Certainly. Little caveat from me, I'm not sure, it may have no meaning. Where did you actually find the name Metiri Group? Is it something that came to your mind, something you saw somewhere else? Is there a meaning behind the title?
Yeah, so I think about our industry really as an industry of measurement, and that's the meaning. And so when I think about what we do is really about measurement, and trying to bring that forward and carry that through. I thought was a neat play on sort of our activity and what our space really represents.
No, certainly. Very nice. Very nice. I said that's news to me. I was just curious, I think, when you were speaking there. So that's great. So obviously, 20, 25 years of experience within the sector. I imagine everything's changed quite a lot. I think in discussions we've actually had, we've discussed instrumentation changing, becoming more precise. Discussed that with Chris Hansen actually on a previous episode. I suppose I'd be really curious to see, how you think the sector has evolved in other ways. And well, yeah, how have you seen the TIC industry evolve over time? And I suppose, looking to the future, I mean, what does the future for the industry look like?
Well, I mean, I think the future for the industry is really bright and strong. I think the importance of our work, the importance of the data labs, independent testing labs generate, I think is absolutely critical and essential. And I think that's become sort of ever more prevalent. And I think even at a more broader consumer level, people are more aware of what's in the food they eat. Is the water safe to drink? Is a product safe to use? And I think those questions, those concerns, all have a tie back in with the testing industry. And I would say 20, 25 years ago when I started, we were the kind of business that you've never really heard of and don't really see, but there's very important work that's happening there behind the scenes. Again, I think over the years, through very public events and circumstances, you've just seen the rise of, well, how do you know that food's safe to eat, or how do you know that water is safe to drink? And you can say, well, hey, there's a lab, and they do this testing, and it's on a certain frequency, and the lab's accredited, and it's regulatory driven testing, and it's submitted to the state or to the US EPA. It sort of opens up, I think, a broader population's eyes to sort of how that works, and I think that has enhanced sort of the appreciation for our industry. I think In other areas, yes, instrumentation has improved, technology has advanced. We're working in ways that we weren't able to work 20 or 25 years ago. But still a lot of the work happens in the lab, and the instrumentation has special requirements. It needs certain conditions. It needs expert trained people. Those things are just as important, if not more important, than they were, when I started my career. It's just been the standards have just been raised, and so it's been fun to rise with those standards.
No, I bet it certainly is. And I mean, as you've mentioned there, I think, the testing sector, it's probably the biggest sector that no one's heard of. We typically say, don't, I think we've mentioned that before.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the importance of it even in the Paris Olympics with, the River Seine and the water quality there. So testing, it's everywhere. People don't realize this. I mean, there's been a lot of increase in regulation with PFAS, and we've seen, the industry going in different directions. Where do you think the next PFAS will be? Do you think it's, testing for microplastics in food that you touched on? Do you think it's, a wider climate issue? I mean, where do you personally see the industry going, or what the next big issue and need for regulation will be?
I think there's plenty of runway on PFAS alone. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Um, it's the forever chemical, right? So it is everywhere. It's within us, and exposure has happened and continues to happen. So I think there will be a continuing need there, but it's very much emerging, and I think we're learning a lot as we go along. I think there are other areas. Microplastics is something. You've seen personal care products and pharmaceuticals in water, and so I think there are other areas that are constantly getting looked at and evaluated. And then there's still cleanup happening from decades and decades ago, and those chemicals of PCBs and um, PAHs and metals, those still remain, very real, tangible risks. And it's really important that we continue to maintain our monitoring and supervision, of those in addition to any new or emerging ones.
No, I agree, and it's probably something that we don't think about. Probably myself included. We're always looking at the future and what's coming next, but we forget there's still issues ongoing. So, no, quite a good point. And I mean, you kind of already answered it, Cabo, but I'd still be remiss if I didn't ask you. I mean, why should people, I suppose, consider a career in tech? Those from college, etc. And I suppose you had a little bit of a unique route into the industry. I mean, what routes would you say there is for those wanting to get into tech?
Well, I mean, I think having an interest in science, I think, is helpful. I think having if you have an ability in science, then it's just sort of more of a bullseye in terms of a target field. If you've had lab exposure and have worked in labs, and you like that environment, then I think a career in TIC, presents something. I don't think there's anything wrong with having, even though I don't have it, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a really strong science background and being able to bring, a depth of technical understanding to the work, to the operations, to the regulatory requirements. But I think even if you don't have that, I still think it's an exciting and attractive space. Growth is a big thing, and figuring out ways to grow, figuring out how you answer commercial questions. Um, those are all, client services, dealing with people. I think for those who have a variety of interests, those intersections happen in the tech space, like they do in a lot of other industries. Um, but I think it's a space where you truly can make a difference. I think our work is important, it's essential, it's impactful, and especially so on the environment. So if you have a passion for the environment and you care about clean water, clean air, clean soil, then I think you've got some of the basic ingredients and foundational elements to maybe explore the TIC industry a little bit further.
Absolutely. Have you found a lot of people joining the industry as being, people from college, so younger kids, or have you found it's maybe been people from adjacent industries, if it's, pharma, biotech, or even people coming out of, I suppose, the TIC industry and using it almost as a stepping stone to go the other way towards the biotech pharma side? What have you
Yeah,
found?
I think all of the above. We bring in a lot of young associates right out of college and community college, and in fact, in a lot of cases, we have a lot of people that start working for us when they're in college, and they're going to school, but they're also working at the same time. And there are different shifts that we have that can accommodate varying schedules and school schedules and whatnot. Um, but but there's definitely a pathway in, from university and college. There's also there are lateral moves that happen as well, where you've gained experience in one area, and it's transferable. There's, as with in any case, there's a learning curve that happens, but for the right people, they can tackle that learning curve. They understand the framework of the industry and how things sort of fit and piece together. Um, and I think in any organization, in any industry, it's still so important to be able to work with other people. And so skills like your interpersonal skills, your teamwork abilities, um, your emotional intelligence, all of those skill sets are so important for forming good teams, for leadership. Um, we can teach a lot of the other skills and a lot of the other nuances of, regulatory requirements and customer needs. And so I think, however you come in, I think there's a way, to find a fit within TIC.
Certainly, and there's a lot, as you said there. There's a lot of different attributes that would make someone successful within the industry. So, like yourself, doesn't necessarily have to be a scientific background. If it is, that's great. If you're very strong in communication and interpersonal skills, as you said, can collaborate well with the team, it'll certainly help. So, no, that is great. Now, I suppose I want to shift the focus of the conversation a little bit to your operational background, Cabo. So, a little bit unique again, quite a unique career, I guess, in terms of, I suppose, leading a business that was pre-established to going and, setting up your own environmental testing firm. So the question I have for you is, I suppose, what operational differences have you noticed between leading an established testing firm and building your own, maybe in terms of acquisitions, culture, etc.?
Yeah, well, I think when you don't have a foundation that's already in place, a lot of questions can be answered in a lot of different potential ways. And you have to think about what you think are the most important values that you have, that you think are important for, your business, and where you think, those values can meet other key stakeholders, right? Whether it's employees, whether it's customers, investors. Um, and so for me, um, that the ability to define that structure was really exciting, and the fact that there were a lot of unanswered questions that needed to find answers. Some of which you think you find on day one, and then you learn you need to adjust those a little bit, and circumstances change. Um, and I think that agility, the ability to stay nimble with what you think and maybe the assumptions that you hold. If you can stay flexible with those, then I think your business can also stay flexible and evolve as your clients' need evolve, or evolve as your employees' needs evolve. And I think we see that when we've grown through M&A, and we've acquired other businesses, and we've brought them into Metiri. I mean, there were certain things that they did that made them very successful, um, and there are also areas where they need to change, and that change process is um, can be a difficult one. It can be exciting and exhilarating, but it can also be a process that is a little bit unnerving, and you can have different feelings and emotions about that. And so being clear about where you're going and where you're headed, uh, you want to be able to bring as many people along with you as you can. And we've been fortunate to find a lot of people open to change and receptive to learning about how to do things differently or better, but also sharing their best practices, right? We don't have all the answers, certainly. And one of the great things about um, M&A and acquiring businesses is that you get an inside line to discover ways that they operated that you'd never thought about, or that they've figured out a solution to a problem that you haven't figured out, and you say, wow, that's never thought about it that way, and isn't that something, and how do we bring that into our organization and learn from them. So it's a two-way street, but it's something I think that can always be evolving, and I think that nature of it is, for me, is something that's very exciting, and I think it is, for the other members of our team as well.
I think you've touched on something there that a lot of people maybe overlook when they're looking and considering M&A, selling their company or acquiring a company. Is actually, it is a two-way process, and you can learn so much from that other party. As you said, it's almost a mixing pot of experiences and ideas that can really help the company grow into one. I think less from a process point of view and maybe more from personality and individuals. How have you found the actual integration of that culture in terms of personalities mixing, the ideologies coming together? Has there been a little bit of butting heads, in all honesty, or has it been quite smooth and people willing to, I suppose, all come together for one project and to grow?
Well, I mean, there are always points of conflicts, probably too hard of a word, but there are always sticky points,
Sure.
right? And some people, I think, really lean into certain things, and other people are more cautious. And I don't think one is right or one is wrong. But I think one of the great examples of how it is a two-way street is that you can find people that maybe have been in a certain role in one organization, and in a different organization, they find a way to sort of exceed even what they had done previously, right? And so the environment, I think, is really important for what people can achieve and how they're able to find, their own success. And maybe, in one environment, they think they've sort of reached the ceiling. In another environment, all of a sudden there are a lot more opportunities that appear open to them. And we've been fortunate to find some really great people and be able to open up some opportunities to them outside of the four walls of the business they were in,
Sure.
but within the larger sort of four walls of Metiri. And that's just awesome, right? I mean, you see people grow, develop, lean into new challenges, think through different problems. They get to work with different people, and they get to build relationships at different levels and across the business. And so I think that's just a great opportunity that M&A provides. Is you get to expand your network, and the people who join the company get to expand theirs. And I think that has the potential to open up nice opportunities for everyone.
No, of course, it certainly does. I mean, is that something you look at when, I suppose, considering whether acquiring a company, the actual individuals, their openness maybe to, coming on board, learning new ideologies, I suppose, what their existing culture's like? Maybe it's myself overlooking, or is that something you've ever thought about when you, as I said, analysing these companies or going and speaking to the team?
Yeah, I mean, culture is super important. Peter Drucker said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Every day, and the perfect strategy, you know, trying to execute that in the wrong culture, I think is very, very difficult. But even an imperfect strategy, with the right culture, probably can still work. And it's hard to assess that when you're doing M&A. It's hard to fit that into the process, and usually it's a process that's there's a lot of discretion, and but but you do try to understand that. You do try to get the best handle that you can on, who is there, what people have done, in their careers to date, try to get a flavor for that, because everybody's a little bit different. And even if everybody's doing environmental testing, everyone's going to have a little bit different of a culture, sometimes very different culture. And you see that, I think, even the culture, even at certain locations within Metiri. Yes, we're trying to establish common culture throughout the organization, but every location has a little bit of its own culture, and that's okay. I think they can coexist. They can live together, and so part of the M&A process is really trying to assess and understand that cultural dimension um, as you go through the process.
Certainly, and I think as long as everyone has, the Metiri's mission and vision, then having their own little personalities, we'll say, office to office, location to location, is probably a better thing. Actually, I suppose it's rather than everyone being robotic and all the exact same. So no, I appreciate that. I suppose with a company like yourself, acquisition and having people come through. I mean, what advice would you give to people looking to? I'm not saying consider a career in TIC, but just generally, I suppose considering maybe Metiri Group or just in general looking at the industry and or wanting to get in the industry from college. What advice? You touched on it briefly, but maybe as I said, any closing thoughts or just with the September careers fair going up, anything that you'd like to add that maybe would entice people in, or maybe even any ways that Metiri Group maybe stands out from the crowd in your approach.
Yeah, well, I think I think there are a lot of ways that we stand out from the crowd, of course, and I think my general advice to people is that they just stay open minded. I don't really think there are bad choices that you make around your career. There's no one right move to make. Every choice that you make can give you experience. You can learn things. It may not be what you ultimately do for your career, and that's okay. But even if you go somewhere for 2 years, you're going to build a network. You're going to learn certain things. You're going to see things you like. You're going to see things you don't like. All of those learnings are so valuable, I think, and essential. They help inform your own sense of self. They help you discover, what you like to do, what you care about doing, what's important to you, how you like to be treated, how you don't like to be treated, how you like seeing other people treated. All of those happen through experience. They all happen because, you weren't waiting for the perfect job, or you weren't focused on it is the perfect job, but you just said, hey, I can learn some things and get some great experience, and if I'm not here forever, it's okay. And I think that we've seen um, I think we certainly have a more mobile workforce than we've ever seen in the past, and so I think that openness, both on the employee side as well as the employer side, um, I think it's okay. I think it's healthy. Sometimes, it's only meant to last a season and not forever. And but I think both sides can benefit, and it can be a win-win. So I think staying open to learning, open-mindedness to growth, taking, you know, sometimes it's just a small forward step, not a huge one, but it's still a forward step. And, I think if people can keep that in perspective as they go through their journey, then I think that'll help them find the places where, they want to be and the things that they want to be doing.
No, absolutely, I agree. And I'll be honest, it's quite tough to follow on from that, Cabot. It really is. But no, I agree with everything you said. It's 100%. You often see in sports, people may be there for a season and contribute quite a lot to the club or whatever it may be. And everyone has to look at the long term, but also people can be so valuable in the short term as well. So, no, I
Yep.
fully agree with what you're saying. Well, listen, it was very good having you on. I'll be honest, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you to everyone, I suppose, listening to the podcast. I imagine you've learned a lot from Cabot. What I'll say is, please like and subscribe to the Avetics Group, but also check into the Metiri Group and the great work they're doing as well. Cabot, thank you very much.
Thanks, Anton.